You take your time. Intro it that way because I love it though.
This is Nothing Explained. Throughout the course of this podcast, I will have explained hopefully nothing. So, therefore, I cannot be accountable for anything I say. I do not give medical advice. I do not give legal advice. We're just here to chat. Mm-hmm. So, joining me, Chair 1, Ryan Fu. Did I do that? I did. Right.
Hey.
Ryan is at Ilfuminati, if you want to catch him on Twitter. I am at Nothing Explained. And over here in Chair 2, we're joined by Andi. Right?
Oh, I'm over here now.
Yeah.
Hi.
I moved it. Well, so the on-screen situation here is such that like everyone doesn't look like everyone's looking at everyone, you know? Mm-hmm. So like you put them on screen and everyone's looking away from each other. So I try to make it feel more like a group. So I think we've succeeded.
Nice. I like that.
All right. So today I definitely will not be explaining energy.
Woohoo! Energy. What kind of energy, Sampson?
Oh, the kind you put in your car, you know, that runs your refrigerator.
Okay.
Chemical energy for us. Although there's a bit of nuclear out there. And as we can see by what's on screen for everyone, nuclear makes up just a little bit. So is that
fun.
what that ends nearing 2000? That might be a little bit more now, but most of our nuclear infrastructure is actually dying.
Yeah.
As we speak.
Yeah, I actually just had a whole conversation with a Rocky Flats activist lady in like how much shade and like dirty stuff is still going on regarding Rocky Flats.
Yeah. Do you know they just pumped, there's like a big well there, and they just pumped nuclear waste into the ground there for like a long time.
Mm-hmm. They're saying
That's
that
common practice.
Yep. They're saying that it would have taken, to clean it up properly, would have taken 30 years and $760 billion.
Yeah.
So that obviously didn't happen.
Yeah, which I think is an excellent point is that everyone, you know, you haven't, people say, oh, I can't believe that Trump is like, he's such a terrible person and he's like defunding the EPA. And I'm like, has the EPA ever really done anything really?
Yeah, I mean, like the concept of the EPA is very important.
Yeah, they're advertised as being this people, you know, and you're like, oh, well, if we didn't have the EPA, the air would be terrible and all these things.
but the air's terrible.
And most people can't actually point to like major disasters. Like most people are aware of the Macondo oil well, which is the Gulf Water Horizon guy. Mm-hmm. You know, but like the act of actually cleaning that up would pretty much decimate the oil. And like if we actually took away the amount of money it would take to clean that up, that would have major implications for the oil companies. You know, we might have to liquefy a couple companies. Yeah. And there's plenty of examples of that, major oil spills that would have just completely bankrupted companies were they forced to clean it up.
I mean, you could say that for the financial crisis or other large
corporate exactly. Like too big to fail situations. Yep. Exactly. And that's very common. And the EPA does not do that at all. They actually enforce fines, which are it's much cheaper to pollute and pay the fine than it is to actually run a clean business, until you get into the aspects of running an actual clean business, in which case the money begins flowing into your company. But people aren't interested in that because the end game is the exact opposite of what we're looking at right now. So this is the Intro to Energy podcast, where I just wanted to kind of like touch on one of the things. I do a lot of weird stuff. Like I like weird stuff. We talked about aliens last week,
Fringe.
and I'm into like all the stuff, and I've definitely spent a lot of time researching free energy, which if you talk to any scientist who considers himself real, that stuff doesn't exist, and I would argue that's not the case. But nonetheless, we don't need free energy to talk about how awesome it could be and how awesome it isn't. So this podcast will mostly focus on the things that it isn't, the awesome that it isn't, and we'll touch on the things that we could have that we don't, which is proof that it is not awesome.
Okay.
So before we get into that, though, I did want to share. I had a crazy dream last night.
Tell us.
I was gonna stay up late and would work, do another little thing on my work project, and I was like laying on the couch, and I was like, I just don't have it in me. I'm just gonna go to sleep right now, which was like 8:30 or something, super early, and I'll get up really early and knock that out in the morning. And so the consequence of going to bed really early is I got a lot of sleep. And getting a lot of sleep, like my brain's like, all right, well, I've slept enough, so I'm gonna get back to work, and just starts cranking out stuff. So the consequence is I have like a 5-book dream, you know, like a mini series, like movie after movie after movie. And it was all like space based, like doing kind of crazy stuff, spaceships and flying around and stuff.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and so like book 3 is, you know, I'm waking up and I'm like, this is nuts, and then I like go back to sleep and I drop right back into it. I'm talking like this is probably the longest dream I've ever had, like 2 or 3 times. Like this whole thing that happened to me last night. But there was one point in the middle where I was hanging out with somebody and we're like in this kind of like hall full of people who were like, you know, like soldiers or whatever in the space army or whatever it is. Like, it doesn't matter. Like we're on a planet somewhere and we're all meeting for something, and they're like, oh, everybody has to take this drug, right? And for whatever reason, and you know, you're a soldier, you just do what you're told, pop it in your mouth. And then what happens is like this crazy disaster movie, kind of like fleeing from sandstorms and like flying across the galaxy and all of these things, and like it was nuts. And then it all dies down and we're like looking at each other and we're like all of a sudden sitting there like, wait, what just happened? And we realized that the drug was acid, and we just had this like crazy acid trip where we kind of just like wandered around the area, did not go anywhere, did not travel. There was like something with a silo and we thought it was like a crashed rocket.
You did acid in your dreams.
Yeah. And so like, but then realized that we had just done acid in our dreams, and then proceed to trace our footsteps back and being like, oh my God, this was the sandstorm, but it wasn't a sandstorm.
It was like a sandbox.
Yeah, no, it was like a windy and the sand was blowing, but we thought we were in the middle of like, you know, like Mad Max style, like planet-sized sandstorm, you know, like, but that was the crazy thing. I was like, we just did acid, let's go figure out what just happened. And we backtracked our steps. And that, you know, that was a whole movie in itself. And I was, and there was like, oh man, it was one of those things where I have a dream journal and I haven't touched it in a while because I haven't remembered my dreams in a while. And I wrote like 2 sentences. I was like, longest dream ever, can't remember shit.
Yeah.
But
that happens.
I've never done any acid in my dreams, and I've definitely never like retraced my steps like that. So
yeah.
So I had to share that. At some point I can come back and listen to that and be like, there's all those you had to been there. It's like that was a lifetime of you had to been there. I lived a couple lifetimes in my dreams last night. So
it sounds tight.
It does sound tight. I have a
fun.
lot of great apocalyptic space dreams like that.
Nice.
Abductions.
Yeah.
Those are probably real, by the way.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not getting abducted from your bed, but your consciousness is probably being abducted.
Probably.
And you probably chose to do that before you were born.
Okay, that sounds fun.
Just wanted to let you know.
I don't have any of those experiences.
Aww.
Yeah, my dreams, when I have dreams, they're usually very mediocre. Like they're even if they're really vivid, they're like us like sitting in this room having a podcast.
You're like, I put on my jelly on my sandwich really good.
Yeah, no, it's like a deeper metaphor. I can tell that something's happening, and my brain isn't smart enough to decipher the actual information it's receiving. So it gives me this metaphor, and I think the reason I go with basic is because it's really clear to me my dream is supposed to be a metaphor, and I know that when I'm dreaming it. So it's more like I'm talking to my dream than like I'm dreaming it.
Do you think yours was a metaphor for this podcast about energy?
I don't know. It was too big to be a metaphor. There was too much going on.
Yeah.
I wish I could
remember. Too big to be a metaphor is a really good t-shirt.
It's too big to be a metaphor.
I mean, it could have been like 7 metaphors or something, or I don't know.
Oh God.
In your case, all I could think of was like, you know, you're looking at your dream like you're watching dogs playing poker, you know, the art, and you're just thinking to yourself, this isn't art.
kind of. Sometimes it's like that.
Like,
my dream.
Can't your subconscious come up with anything better, Andy?
Well, that's what I think when I'm reading. Yeah, I'm like, come on, like I could be like fighting zombies or something, but we're not. Anyway. I'm interested to hear about energy.
Yeah, we mentioned in the previous podcast, that was the news item that I found of the week, because I follow cryptocurrencies, and I will do a cryptocurrency show. But so the guy who created JavaScript and Mozilla browser and that whole suite of amazing open source things has moved on to a major new project called the Basic Attention Token, and a new browser called Brave, which operates on that whole system. So the idea is that when you are looking at your screen, they are watching at what you're looking at, and then your attention is being converted into a digital currency, and that digital currency can be funneled back to people that you support, or even back to yourself, like into your pocket. So like currently, advertising is so inefficient, and there's a little video I recommend everybody watch. If you just Google Basic Attention Token or Brave browser, you'll get there. But
do I get paid to do that?
It depends on if you use the browser.
Not yet. but the supposedly the average cost, like the amount of bandwidth being taken up by advertising, of your month, like the amount of bandwidth being taken up by advertising for the average person is like about half of your bill. Like that, and you're not technically even using it. You don't care about your advertising.
You're not even looking at most of it.
Yeah, you're already prioritizing how the information gets to you based on whether or not they have a relationship between.
And it still sucks.
Yeah. So now he is creating a situation where you can have control over what's being streamed to you, and you can have control over like the value of it and what you want to do with that value. Awesome. And it's a very interesting situation because that's $20 per person per month, like planet wide, essentially, as a market an untapped market that he's looking at. So, but it's also going to be a digital currency. So who knows? And I saw somebody said, "Oh, hey, have you heard of this?" And they said basic attention token, and I was like, I know what that is based on the name, and it's an idea I had years ago, and I'm glad someone's finally doing it.
That's good.
I've had a lot of good ideas where I'm like, I should just tell somebody about it. But I was like, they'll get to it. It's a good enough idea. They'll get to it.
The consciousness.
Every time I have one of those, my brother says, "But you didn't, did you?"
but you didn't, did you? That could be like a podcast in its own.
Right.
Today's good idea that I had that I didn't do,
but didn't pursue.
I always just say intellectual property rights given, like right away. As soon as I say it, I'll let it. Just anyone wants to take that, take it.
Yeah. That's sort of what saying it is. Otherwise, you can keep it inside.
Not technically.
Not legally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. But you mean legally? Anything that you say is
it's still my intellectual property. No, unless I say that I've given it.
Oh, that makes sense.
So,
yeah, that's true. It's your intelligence.
Well, yeah. I appreciate that gift. So let's do energy.
Cool.
Let's see. So, I guess the big one, most of our energy is coming from power plants, coal, nuclear, the occasional gas. And those are wildly efficient.
Oh, super efficient.
Inefficient. I meant to say inefficient.
Oh, I know.
I
thought you were being sarcastic.
They're actually not too bad, really. Like relative to the amount of energy you're extracting from the amount of potential chemical energy that's being put in versus what's coming out is pretty good. It's better than your car or whatever, which is why electric cars are a reasonable answer because the amount of you can measure it as a carbon output as well, but the amount of energy that it takes to like move it through the wires and be generated from a power plant is much, much more efficient than what's actually happening in your car. And part of that is that you can tune a power plant to like an RPM, and your car is, you're pressing on and off of the gas pedal, and so you're changing the resonant frequency of your engine, so like there is a place in your engine where it gets really good gas mileage, but you're moving in and out of that constantly. So, and then on top of that, it's not a very good.
Like when you get a U-Haul and it says, stay in the zone.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Or if you drive a car to go, you get a little rating. You get an eco rating.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. That's very cool.
It is cute.
So I knew this guy in a random job, and for someone who used to design power plants, he was just like fixing computers basically. So it's kind of an interesting story, but he used to design power plants, and he would go in and he would move the power plant into that place we were just talking about where it was getting the most amount of efficiency. And then he would get yelled at.
Why?
Because the energy company has written a contract with the creator of the energy plant. Like, this is how much gas and oil we plan to sell you over the life of the power plant, or like 3-year contract or whatever, like however long it is. But they're saying like, if you don't buy this much from us, we are going to penalize you. So you're going to pay for it either way. And so the guy running the power plant's like, dude, don't make it efficient. That's not going to do anything. Like we're on the hook for buying energy.
Right.
So we can't.
The less efficient it is, the better it is.
We cannot improve the situation beyond a certain point. So
and we don't want to go out of business.
Yeah, exactly. So the other, let's see, light bulb is a good example. Light bulbs generate like 75% heat and 15% light, even though what we want is the light. Yeah. Which is why we're moving towards LED. Mm-hmm. And then, you have your compact fluorescents, which are better, but they're full of mercury. Yeah. Which, by the way, if you read the EPA warning on any light bulb, if you break a light bulb in a room, you should leave the room for 24 hours, and a pregnant woman should not be in the room for a year.
Yeah, mercury is pretty powerful stuff.
Yeah, it's the most potent by weight, basically, heavy metal on the planet. So, Another interesting note, like gasoline in your engine, you can't actually burn gasoline at 100% efficiency in your engine because it will destroy the engine because it's such a powerful it's such a powerful fuel, which in actual engine terms, it's why the timing is retarded. So you spark the engine just a little bit ahead of time so that you're burning fuel a little bit ahead of time.
What if that gets off? Can your engine explode?
Well, it doesn't literally explode. It burns a hole in the piston.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
And it ruins your engine very quickly. Yeah. So, so as evidence of that, waste fuel and things are being spent, like the products of bad combustion are being spewed out into your exhaust pipe. Yep. And so in order to fix that problem, you have a catalytic converter. So your catalytic converter is there to burn all the things your engine didn't. So it's very obvious every car on the road is not burning everything in the engine. So there's something on the back end which is finishing the job but extracting zero energy. It's just doing the chemical reaction.
Wow, that's kind of stupid.
Yeah, totally stupid. So, and even more stupid. Let's see if I can find it up here. Where is this? Nope. Yeah.
Ooh, charts.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. What do they put in it?
So this is a barrel of oil and everything you get from it. So the red down here is gasoline. And then at the top you have other kerosene, lubricants, feedstocks, asphalt, petroleum, coke, still gas, liquefied gases, residual fuel oil, none of which even adds up to the total of gasoline. But interesting, that top set of categories, the lubricants, the feedstocks, this is where you get plastic from. And all of that stuff is valued at like well over $100. So they're extracting like $100 easy out of a barrel of oil just from the top 10%, And that's where like most of your industrial products are coming from. And then your gasoline and your diesel fuel and everything is the leftover waste, of which there's like $30-$40 worth.
Is that part of the reason it's so inefficient or too efficient?
Well, no, but so the point of this is that we wanted all that stuff, the $100 at the top there, your plastic and lubricants. We wanted that from the get-go. That's why we were yanking stuff out of the ground. And all the gasoline and diesel fuel was just leftover. They used to just dump it in the river, like the petroleum power plants. So they get together and they were like, well, what are we going to do? We've got all this extra crap coming out of these barrels of oil. So what are we going to do with all this extra crap? And so they engineered the economy to use it. And the way they did that was prohibition. So the entire world was running on alcohol at the turn of the century. And all your Ford cars, the guy who revolutionized the world, all of his stuff was alcohol initially.
The cars ran on alcohol?
Yeah.
I can't believe I did not know that. That is so frustrating.
Yeah, so all your tractors, like the entire farming industry in the country was running on alcohol. And they were farming their own fuel. They were completely energy independent.
Right.
So then Firestone Tires, GM Automotive, and Standard Oil, which was the major oil trust, the Rockefellers, essentially. Right. They got together and they gave a bunch of money to a bunch of old ladies who thought that alcohol was a sin. And they got up and they advertised what a terrible thing was. And essentially all the newspapers got on board and pretended like alcohol was a terrible idea. And they made it illegal. And what most people don't understand is that the alcohol that was illegal was all of it. And the amount of alcohol being produced was like a little bit for drinking and a lot for engines. Yeah. And so that became illegal. So then everyone got switched over to gasoline and diesel fuel. And it was a complete engineered thing. Yeah.
No,
and so,
and it's like every story is like
every
this.
story. Yeah. And so, and on top of that, you don't have trains, you have buses, which use tires. So you're essentially like taking oil out of it and you're shaping it into a tire and then you're grinding it into dust, literally, on a road made of oil, which is also being ground into dust. And it's like, hey, let's take a bunch of this stuff that's toxic and then grind it into dust and breathe it. That's the basic energy economy that we live in.
Hey, but we made a lot of money while we did it.
Well, we wouldn't have made money on that if we didn't do that.
Yeah.
Is what you're like, come on, we need to make money on this somehow. What are we going to do with it?
Well, just to be fair in some way, just how little it seems like people knew how harmful any of this stuff was in the first place,
Oh, that's the same time, story
all these
of everything.
People are smoking cigarettes and blowing in their baby's face, or being pregnant and blowing, and smoking cigarettes. I have nothing against cigarettes. All I'm saying is, there's an entire culture of people who think here's a resource, or this is a part of the culture. This is absolutely acceptable, like the fire retardant spray.
Yeah.
And then 40 years down the line, oh wait, probably shouldn't have done that. Probably shouldn't have put asbestos in the walls. Probably shouldn't have put lead in the pipes.
Probably shouldn't have sprayed everything with DDT.
Yeah. Plenty of things.
There's an interesting tie-in back to cigarettes because now they have fire retardant bands in the cigarettes, so that if you fall asleep with a cigarette in your hand, the cigarette puts itself out.
No, there's no band. It's the whole paper is treated with this stuff.
Oh, well, it used to be little bands like every like there was like 3 or 4 so that your cigarette would burn a little bit and then hit a band and put itself out.
Now it's got like that the whole way through. If it says FSC, Forest Service certified, that has fire retardant.
Yeah, which is funny because it is legal to put that in a cigarette because it's not toxic until you burn it. So as a product, you're selling a non-toxic product.
You're not selling a product that's going to burn.
Yep.
Right.
Like but it's only toxic when you burn it.
You can sell fireworks in unincorporated Arapahoe County because they're not illegal until you light them on fire.
Firework them. Yeah, that's super interesting.
That's fine. But there's another example of something that you can buy. Oh, mushrooms. You can buy the spores, but you can't grow the mushrooms. The psychedelic kind.
Yeah.
That's another random.
Same. Well, in a lot of states, you can get salvia. You can grow salvia, but you're not, like, it's a felony to consume it, but you can buy it, grow it, all that. It's a pretty popular plant.
The idea is how responsible are people for knowing the, like, long-term cost of doing whatever. Like, here's another example. Recently, they returfed all of these football fields with the recycled rubber for tires, and then they realized, after this much wear and tear and weather
and heat,
that when the players are hitting this material, it's aerosolizing and it's giving them a lung infection.
Oh my god!
And so they're putting like millions of dollars. I mean, in an institution, like an industry that seems to know what they would be doing with turf, right? But they don't, and it's killing their players. I mean, like they just don't care. Let's just play football. Who the fuck cares?
Oh, that's terrible. I played indoor soccer on a field full of ground up tires.
But I mean,
like,
the idea, I think, in most people's minds is if you can take the waste from a product that you're producing and you've got it left over, like, oh, isn't that good for the environment? You're taking the waste. We're figuring out what to do with it.
But that's not even close to a permanent solution, which is funny as well.
Of course not, but it seems like it is to the larger public, right?
Yeah.
Like, we're turning the plastic into more plastic.
Right, yeah. Recycling generally is really quite a stopgap measure.
Electric cars.
Yeah, exactly. And there's lots of different of various individual gaps. There's no one answer to what is a systemic problem.
Yeah. Well, electric cars is a good example too, and the hybrid, because if you actually look at the cost of operating a hybrid vehicle, it's way higher than
in terms of like a carbon footprint.
Yeah, and cost per mile is the basic,
mile, yep.
And the reason is because the batteries are extremely expensive to produce, and then they usually will fail. Like in the average life of a car, say a decent car get 250,000 miles. If you really want to drive it into the ground, to do that in a hybrid car, you're going to need like at least 2 sets of batteries.
Right, and that's 3/4 of the price of the car.
Yeah, and an extremely toxic and crazy intensive mining situation.
Yeah. The part that really hurts for me is that all of our fancy technology comes from like slavery. Pretty much all.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah, and it's hard. It's still hard for me, like as a human being sitting in front of a microphone, to think.
Or holding a smartphone.
Or look. It's hard for me to really grasp. Like,
not so smart, is it?
Is it? It's hard. This is a product of suffering.
Yeah.
Of real suffering. All of this is a product of and it's hard. It used to make me really angry. Like I used to see really nice buildings and like burn it down. But that's not my reaction now. It's sort of an inability to really truly conceive what's going on. When people talk about like nuclear disaster or the world burning up because it gets too hot, I think it's literally outside of our margins of conception. So how do you talk to people about this if they literally can't conceive of it?
Right, and also, how can you balance those two things against each other? Like you'd say, well, nuclear is not a good solution because this is the possible fallout, or this is what it costs to run it, or whatever. But like, what about the entire civilization of people that's reliant on that power that the nuclear power plant is providing for them? Right. So you're in a catch-22.
Yeah,
you got to get energy from somewhere.
Yeah.
And these are the things that are in place, and to rip it all down would actually probably cause
immense suffering.
Much more suffering than it was as it just goes on.
Yeah.
Yeah. But there are real solutions, which is what we're getting to, because we can complain about stuff all day, and everyone's like, well, guess that's what you do. But most people don't. Most people don't know that there are real solutions now, and none of them. I believe in the magic ones as well, but there are real solutions.
Yeah, mushrooms.
Paul Stamets.
Yeah.
Nice.
He's the man. So you mentioned nuclear, and an interesting thing about nuclear is the fact that. So the difference between in a chemical thing like gasoline, you're breaking the chemical bonds, and that's releasing a little bit of energy, and you're taking advantage of that. So in nuclear, you're breaking a nuclear bond, and you're taking advantage of that. And that's a nuclear bond means you're turning energy directly, you're turning matter directly into energy. But interestingly, in the uranium and plutonium aspect of like what we consider nuclear powered these days, you're only using like 0.1% of the available energy in that fuel. So like you're putting in something at 100%, and then you use it to generate energy. And it's a lot of energy. The 0.1 that you do get out of it is a shit ton of energy. Right. By weight, it's way more than gasoline and coal and all those other guys. So that's why that nuclear power is advertised.
It's scary.
Yeah, but it's super scary. And you're using very little. So what comes out the back end is 99.9% still energy rich,
right?
But then it gets thrown away, and that energy then gets to slowly expel itself as radioactivity over the next 500,000 years.
So the whole concept of radioactive waste is that the waste is the unused portion of energy which can't be harnessed in the reaction that you take from it.
Yes.
Okay. So it's not just that it's super efficient, but that the super inefficient, but that the last bit, they are terrible at how they clean it up or deal with it. Is there a safe way to deal with nuclear waste?
Yeah, not generate it.
Generate it. So how would you do that?
The only thing they do is they just put it in a box and they bury it down as far as they can and hope that nobody ever finds it again.
That's not a good answer.
That is not a good answer.
Yeah, so don't make it.
So there is a good nuclear, and I will get to that in a bit, but I did want to finish the current nuclear we have. The reason that we have current nuclear, besides the fact that I believe that the economic model that we're operating under is one of inefficiency.
Yeah,
because
the more inefficient, the more profit.
And I say this before, they're charging a little fee, like your credit card fee, on every transaction. So the more transactions that we do, the more we make. So it's in their best interest for us to be inefficient, because that drives up the amount of transactions that it takes. Because that's literally inefficient.
You can also take advantage of creating a company that deals with the inefficiencies of your energy.
Let's just make a committee for it.
Yeah, so instead of fixing the problem, you create a committee to like reroute the problem.
We know how effective
and it might technically be better, but it's not actually solving the problem. But the interesting thing about nuclear that no one really understands is that the current nuclear that we have shits out bullets. Right. So, and it's not just nuclear bombs, which is the byproduct. So like when you are creating nuclear power, you're generating fuel, and some of that fuel is going towards bombs, and then the other side of that fuel chain is going into your nuclear reactors. So if we didn't have current nuclear, we wouldn't also have an output of things that you put into bombs. So there's that.
Really?
But what most people don't know is that depleted uranium, the stuff that's coming out the backside, is the perfect bullet.
Yeah.
So
what do you call those kinds of bullets? There's a name for those.
The kinetic something. Yeah. I think it's like a high kinetic whatever. But anyway, it's like lead, so it's really heavy. So the more the heavier the metal, the more energy you can transfer with it. And then and it's also armor piercing. And then when it blows through the piece of metal that you're shooting, it also blows into bits of fire. Like it lights if you shoot a tank,
lights itself on fire.
Yeah, it lights up the entire inside of the tank, and a little chunk that's left behind bounces around 100 times inside the tank and shreds anyone who's inside. It's literally the perfect bullet. But the problem is, it's safe to hold in your hand because it's a low radiation element. But when it explodes into dust, that little dust particle is actually very dangerous because you can breathe it in, and it can sit there and irradiate a very small portion of your lung or whatever, and just sit there forever.
You can buy it on the internet.
Yeah, totally.
Ugh.
You can just get it delivered to your house on Amazon.
What the fuck?
I'm not joking.
So and it's really and that's the thing is it's reasonably safe, and that's what they say. Oh, it's depleted. It's fine, and it is reasonably safe. You can stand next to a pile of it, but don't shoot it.
Or touch it and put it in your mouth because it still has little pieces.
Or it would breathe it in.
Of course, be covered in dust because that's a normal part of manufacturing things.
That's not good.
No, it's just like it's constantly breaking down.
Yeah.
Okay, so other problems we have. So moving into like more solution stuff, solar, is a good idea, done poorly. Ooh, I even have an infographic. Oh, that's over here. This will get to our... So this, I'm going to come back to this YouTube slide here in a minute because it's one of the solutions. But you can see the green there is how much energy we use, which is a fucking shit ton. And then the blue is how much wind power we have installed. And the orange is how much power it's actually generating. So we are generating basically 10% of what we've installed. So for every wind power we're putting in like 1 megawatt of wind power, we're only really getting 0.1 megawatt out of it. And then the amount relative to how much we need is again 0.1. So
there's no point.
Yeah, we've installed enough wind power as advertised to get 10% of our energy needs, but we're really only getting 1%. So it doesn't really work. And then there's some really interesting like low frequency vibration issues with wind power as it is currently envisioned, giant wind turbine things. And there may or may not be a problem with birds. I think that actually scientifically they got that one out of the way.
Yeah. The birds? They got
the birds well, it's not killing them in a manner that they thought was like totally destructive. There was some concern like, oh, we're finding dead birds all over the place at the base of them.
Nature
but someone went through
as fuck, though. It's going to learn.
Yeah, they went through and they're like, okay, no, it's not that bad. So, but also, there is an interesting low frequency vibration situation.
Yeah, I imagine that most birds too would naturally, I mean, like all evolution, it would kill the ones who wouldn't. I don't know. I don't know how much I buy into evolution. Obviously, everything is growing and changing, so they would learn around it, I think. But it does. Well, keep going. What does any of this matter?
What does any of this matter?
Yes.
Good question, sir.
Please do tell.
I want to make sure I didn't skip over anything because I was looking at the wrong page apparently. I didn't really need to talk about that anyway. Oh yeah, tar sands. You heard the word tar sands?
Yep.
Yeah, so that's like
Jane?
What?
Tarzan?
Tar sands.
I'm not familiar.
It's basically sand that's been soaked with oil.
Yep.
But instead of like a pool of oil, you like put a straw in and you suck the oil out. That's like a standard oil well. Mm-hmm. This is like
thick, shaly kind of stuff.
Yeah, like it's basically dirt and oil mixed together, kind of mud more towards. If you picked it up, it would probably just like black dirt. But the way you get it out is you heat it up.
So this is like a naturally occurring place where oil is present.
Yeah, and
we have a really terrible way of extracting it.
Yeah, so it's strip mining, so you have to tear up like massive amounts of ground to get at it, and then you have to heat it up to like get the oil to ooze out of it. So you're using, you might have pulled up.
Oddly satisfying.
Yeah, like half the oil you're picking out of the ground is being used to heat up the shit you just pulled out of the ground. So
what the fuck? You make money off of this, though, is the whole point.
Well,
right?
Okay, so like that's only really economically profitable at $100 a barrel oil. Right. So right now that is not economically productive. So every time we get to oil being expensive again, they fire those things back up. But they're looking at all kinds of like, how are we going to get this, out of the ground? And one of the things they want to do is just like drop a nuclear reactor down into it and generate massive amounts of heat in the ground. And then, you can kind of suck the oil up with it.
That's such a great idea.
Yeah,
that's a great idea. I'm sure Mother Earth is going to be real happy with that.
Well, I mean, a lot of this is just about short-sighted meeting criteria or amounts, like you said. Once it gets expensive, then it makes sense.
Yeah, and so to them, once it gets expensive, it makes sense. Like that is the general issue, and the reason is because everyone talks about all these economic factors and all of these things, and the stock market, this and whatever. But actually, the economy is the size of our energy production. So, like, the world economy is the linear relationship. They're a 1-to-1 relationship with how much energy we're pulling out of the ground, sense. Right? So, the less energy we need or that we use,
trillions of dollars in debt. I'm just going to point that out.
Yeah, well, the interesting thing I always like to point out about debt is they always talk about us owing money, but they never tell us who we owe money to. Because according to, you watch the news, every country in the world is in debt.
Yeah. And
yet they never talk about who every country in the world could possibly owe money to. We have to owe money to someone, right? You can't create a debt without having a creditor.
Well, you can have a broke country with rich banks inside of it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that is
individuals.
That is actually the case we have. Although there's another layer on top of it, like it's technically the people's money. The banks just borrowed from us to then loan it to the government.
Right, and technically somebody's just going to be like a now you're gonna owe me a favor, winky winky.
Yep.
On that.
Mm-hmm.
My favorite kinds of favor, the winky winkies.
Yep.
Yeah. Which usually has something to do with something like this. Like, hey, can I just take that bottom half of your country to find those nasty oil shale things that I can drop a nuclear reactor into and nobody will care?
Oh, I forgot to mention, they did that here in Colorado. At Rocky Flats. They dropped a little nuclear bomb into an oil well up there, and it went terrible. There was a fire. There was a whole, it was 2013.
Nuh-uh. Oh, man, I can't believe I don't know that.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that was the bombing, but that was when the fire was. I think it was related, but the whole Rocky Flat situation, we're going to have somebody in here maybe 2 weeks from now who's an activist talk about that. It's we might be able to get the FBI director who testified against in court against Rocky Flats.
That's amazing.
That'd be cool.
Yeah.
My buddy, the guy who we run Pirate Radio with, his radio name is Rocky Flats. He's like known pretty well in Boulder as Rocky Flats. So.
Dude, it's a crazy
really
situation.
Good drag name too.
Right?
Rocky Flats.
You'd have to be really tall and never wear heels.
Yeah.
That's not what I was thinking.
What were you thinking?
Rocky Flats, like it's rocky sometimes and flat also.
Wow, really?
Well, yeah,
really? Are you just messing with us at this point?
No.
I thought,
what do you call that when it's
tucking?
Two words that.
Oh.
That's no, but that I see where you're going because that is the same thing I'm thinking. But I'm thinking of you have two words that are opposing each other.
Yeah.
They mean like
a conundrum.
Flats. A conundrum. It's ironic.
Dipolarity. Something along those lines.
Mm-hmm. Whatever words. What was that, Rich? An oxymoron? No, kind of. Rocky Flats is.
That's an oxymoron. Yeah, I'll take that.
Yeah,
for sure.
Ding ding
Thanks,
ding
Rich.
ding ding ding.
Thanks, Rich.
Thanks, Rich.
Look at that. The first time he's ever said anything live on air, and it was awesome.
And he was right.
Yeah, definitely.
Feel free to chime in more often, buddy.
Totally.
Let's see. What else? We did wind and how it still sucks.
Are we getting closer to where the actual solutions are?
We're going to get into solar.
I'm feeling
I did want to show
more and more hopeless.
Let's find...
Should I be feeling hopeless at this point? Is that the appropriate reaction?
Okay, yeah, this will be our final slide in everything sucks category.
Wonderful.
Okay, so those of you on screen can see that at best, solar panels produce 21.5% of the sun that they receive. So not even 25% of the sun landing on a solar panel is turned into electricity. So that's a lot of electricity that we are not tapping into. And I do have a kind of a fun story there where this guy, back in the day when I first got into Pirate Radio, I was like, I'm going to interview interesting people. And it just never really took off. But I did manage to go interview this professor at CU, and his name was Garrett something. I can't remember. And the interview's still out there on YouTube. But he'd figured out that he could take like a sheet of metal, and he had a thing you could stamp it. So one move, ka-chunk, solar panel. And all it was just a bunch of tiny antennas. So you know how you have an antenna, like radio broadcast, right? And all you have to do is tune the antenna to the frequency, which is essentially like the wavelength. You just have to make the antenna the same length as the wave, and you can pick up whatever radio it is you're broadcasting. And inside your radio, you're tuning the dial, and you're changing the length of your resonant frequency.
And light is a wave.
Yeah, and light is a wave. So you make a tiny little antenna, and it picks up electricity. And it's like 65% efficient. And it was one move, a small metal film, kerchunk, and it's done. And,
wow.
And he was doing some really interesting stuff. He was researching some stuff, and the reason I wanted to interview him was because he was interested in free energy, and he was like, I think he was a contributor for Paranormal Magazine, and he was waiting for scientific proof of paranormal, free energy, anything, but he was not satisfied that it had happened yet.
Right, nobody's listening to him.
Yeah. Well, but he hadn't found anything either. He was a non-believer. He was still a skeptic, and we talked for a while, and but the interesting thing was, and I want to track him down again, because he had this great idea that has not been commercialized. And I'm like, where's this great idea? What happened? Did it fail? Mm-hmm. Did he get bought out? Did it get shelved? Because I've heard lots of those stories. So I want to know,
It was like, I had a good idea and then I didn't need to do it. Somebody else is going to do it.
I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, but either way, it's not the mainstream practice. And I mean, I've got a question. Like, in this model, could it ever be? Like in the model where inefficiency is profit, it's not, the energy you're using is hardly even the issue. Because whatever you use, you're going to use so inefficiently and be such a dick about.
I need a clarification on this about whether or not that's 25% of what's potential to be used. Like, is it generating it? Or it's not even converting it.
No, this is so like if you have 100 watts of sunshine, you're only getting 25 watts out of the best solar panel on the planet. Currently available. There's lots of conceptual stuff out there.
So if you engineered it differently,
so
you can eventually get 100%.
Yeah, so this guy he built one very easy, non-toxic, a safe manufacturing process, and he was getting like 60%. No. It was a real solution. So that's why I'm like, where is it? Yeah. This was like 10 years ago that I interviewed this guy.
I mean, that's when I started to get into conspiracy theories, and I think here you have this like monster industry and conglomerate. I mean, one that took away cars running on alcohol so that they could run it on this, so that a bunch of people's pockets were lined. Like any potentially viable solution,
they're going to destroy.
They might kill that person.
Oh yeah.
They're going to bury them.
I mean, I'm not sure how gangster these people are because they're in such a plushy place.
I have a story.
I would think that what would happen is that they would have made him seem like a kook.
Yeah.
You know,
it would have been easy.
They would have just made it so that nobody would listen.
Well, and in his case, his tenure would have been threatened or something along those lines.
Yeah.
Because he was a tenured professor. At CU.
That's really, really quite a threat to an educator.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
that's why entrepreneur life.
Nobody controls me.
Yes.
Right?
For me.
And I can choose when I'm walking out and losing my own money.
So real solutions. And let's actually do biofuels first because you just mentioned the alcohol car. Go away. I don't need that.
Alcohol car.
I can't the water believe car.
Stanley Meyer. Yeah, that's a good story too. Okay, so those of you on screen can see that I'm pointing to Alcohol Can Be a Gas, a book by David Bloom.
Alcohol can be a gas.
Is that supposed to be a funny pun?
This is the textbook on how to go out and get hammered.
Nice.
In the very PC language.
Right. Let's have a gas.
I had a gay old time on alcohol. So this is Alcohol as Fuel. And this is a textbook. And I had this book, and apparently I lent it out, and it never came back. So today I got on Amazon, and I bought another copy.
Nice.
Any relation to Judy Bloom?
No. What was her Summer of Tiger? What was the big book she did?
Panicula, I believe.
No, there's Tiger in the
Panicula, really?
Yeah.
Huh. All right.
There was one with a tiger in the title, though, wasn't there? I always think of something tiger whenever her name comes up. Yeah, yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah, nice.
Because that was actually a good book.
So what is this book about?
So Alcohol Can Be a Gas by David Bloom is the textbook on how to make alcohol a usable fuel. Mm-hmm. So the bullet points are, like as I said before, gasoline is not used at 100% efficiency in your engine because it will destroy your engine if it were. But alcohol has more power per, volume of liquid, whatever, than alcohol does. But alcohol is just enough less powerful that you can build an engine to take advantage of all of the power of alcohol and get more energy out of the alcohol per volume of gasoline. So alcohol does in the end make a better fuel in our current piston infrastructure.
And so does diesel.
Yeah, indeed. That's one of the reasons that diesel is more efficient because of the way it's burned. The engine it's longer stroke. It's a slower burn. Mm-hmm. It has more time to extract the energy. Right. That's the whole thing. So, and you could probably do a little bit of mixing of fuels and things and do a better job. But nonetheless, alcohol is a better fuel for an internal combustion piston engine. But the interesting thing is people are like, oh, well, but we can't be turning plants into fuel because we eat plants and that drives energy prices up. And most of the time what they're talking about is corn, which is a terrible way to make alcohol, as it turns out. But if you did want to make all your corn into alcohol, you could feed the byproducts of your corn fermenting process to cattle and they do better. Yeah. Because the whole problem with the cattle industry being fed corn right now is the cattle were never designed to eat starch, and the vast majority of corn is a very starchy substance. Right. So most of their problems, they're being fed tons and tons of antibiotics, which is actually inflammation of the stomach, because they're not supposed to be eating all of the starch. So you could turn all that starch into fuel and then feed the byproduct to a cow. You get a better cow and you get a better car, but we don't do that. Mm-hmm. What else? You can...
And you're talking about all the corn that's already being grown right now.
Yeah. So,
but the amount of corn that's being grown right now is crazy, and that's a whole other problem.
Yeah, totally.
So...
Plus, there's a bunch of corn, being turned into glue and packaging and
right. Of course, it's all interrelated. I'm just saying, if you're gonna, the idea is we'll get ourselves off of fossil fuels, and here are all of the places that it goes, and there was a really big push with the ethanol, like, oh, let's do corn, but then that's causing all these problems too. Yeah,
well, and there's ethanol will eat a couple of kinds of plastic, which were commonly used in fuel systems in cars. So that's why you see the flex fuel sticker on a car, is because that means that they changed over all the plastics on that model of the car, so you could put alcohol in the car. But there's a computer in that car that if it detects any of the wrong kind of fuel, so you can't just put alcohol in that car, because the computer will detect that there's only alcohol in there, and it will be like, I can't run on this. Even though technically it could. It wouldn't run as well because it's designed for gas, but that's a whole thing. And alcohol burns cleaner in the general. That's what it's used in race cars. So that's one of those things where, like, it actually is a really good fuel. It makes very fast cars.
What's the best thing to make alcohol out of?
So I'll get to that. There's a couple steps into that. So there is, I think I told you this the other day, but there is, if you heard of chicory, right? The stuff you smoke your meat with, you can go and get chicory wood, right? That is an invasive plant species, and there is enough chicory growing in the United States. It has a sugary pod that also grows on it. So you could technically chop down all of that wood and turn the wood into gas with a wood gas generator, and all the sugary pods could be fermented, and you could make gasoline. And just the sugary pods would create as much gasoline as all of the corn currently growing in America as well. So there's an invasive species of plant that we don't want, that is creating the same amount of fuel that corn could create. So we don't even need to use the corn if we didn't want to.
And you're sure that going and getting all of those plants wouldn't disrupt a whole bunch of ecology?
Well, it would change. It would dramatically change the ecology, but it is an invasive species, so it represents a change that has already happened.
But taking it out would be another change.
Yeah,
exactly.
And obviously, that wouldn't be the only thing you'd do to fill that alcohol. Well, it's just an example of how much there is.
Yeah, that's just and then there is enough things growing in the ditches along the highways of America to power America. So we're talking about corn, which is like 25 gallons an acre or something of fuel, and then this chicory, which is growing wild, 25 gallons an acre, but that's peanuts. That's nothing. So at the top of the food chain, you have real solutions.
Yay! We're finally here. Woohoo! We made it.
The best one that he talks about is you could run basically, like, you need organic sludge, so like gray water, stuff that's running out of your sink, like you could even garbage disposal, right? Yeah. Running into cattails. And then you have a cattail farm, and what's coming off the backside of the cattail farm is clean water, because the cattail, that's what they're a swamp. You could run swamp water into a cattail, which is what they do, and then you harvest the cattail and you ferment it, and you're getting more like 1,000 gallons per acre. And you could, like, every country in America could be running its gray water into a swamp, getting clean water and enough fuel to run the country out.
Right.
Like, it's a totally feasible solution.
I mean, it's some pretty obvious things, like where it seems like in most other countries you don't have clean water running into the toilet.
Yeah,
and
pretty basic.
And that could have changed long ago.
Yeah.
Right. So it to me it seems like about how actually logical, no matter how logical any of these things seem, in implementing them, the fact that it's not done. It hasn't been done. It's like, how do you convince people out of some sort of
delusion?
Yeah,
that's the whole point of this podcast. Actually that is the point of the podcast I want to do. Yeah. And this specific podcast regarding to energy is like, there are real solutions, and we've had them forever, and we don't have them now. What happened?
Yeah. Why?
Yeah, exactly.
Isn't it just a lot of the same people pulling these certain strings, or?
Yeah, so a actual 1 degree of separation anecdote. My stepdad is a banker, and he was working on biofuel banking, like, lending money to people who wanted to do ethanol plants and things. And this was in the mid-'80s, and the head guy on their little commission was assassinated, and they parked the project in the 80s.
That'll end your shit.
And point. Yeah. That wasn't even 1 degree.
Yeah. They didn't even like warn him off. They were just like, see ya, buddy.
Damn.
Did they even try to make it look like it was an accident?
I didn't get the whole story, but it was a bullet, so I don't think that it was not like it wasn't like it wasn't a Seth Rich robbery where nothing got stolen or anything.
Right.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. I wonder why. It seems like a lot of people are really getting hip to these kinds of concepts too.
Right.
And I think also in an internet age, it's not as accessible, especially for more popular figures, to just knock them off or whatever the concept is.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Who knows? It is a crazy world, and kings and queens and warlords have been doing this shit for a long time.
I mean, this is how I always think about this in a weird way, is if all the humans ceased, we just disappeared, nature would reset itself. Mm-hmm. Like, it would just figure it out. It has this really incredible intuition, and it just works itself out.
You might even have humans again one day.
Right, yeah, maybe, or not.
Or something,
something accidental like that.
Intelligent. Yeah, you might have like hyper-intelligent squirrels.
Right. So,
or dolphins, maybe.
But we don't make any effort at this point to now be part of the ecology. It's just about disrupting it.
Yeah. That is.
And yeah, it's got to absolutely be about who's making the money, because otherwise we would have there's enough people that seem to have been hip to this, but pre-Tupperware, which I just found out was made by Earl Tupper. We looked that up last night.
Like his name was Earl Tupper? He was the Earl of Tupper.
His name was Earl Tupper, and we made a bet about whether or not it was somebody's name or it was like a place or it was a made-up word. It's a man. It's a man. Last name.
Thanks, Mr. Tupper.
But yeah, the like pre-Tupperware, even Tupperware as like a reusable, I guess.
Tupperware was great, with the exception of like that top clear layer would always peel off, and you couldn't microwave it with red sauce.
The microwave is another horrific invention.
Yeah.
But you're not sacrificing convenience for like maybe long-term disaster. Like when most people were thinking, whatever contribution this is to culture, society, or civilized living, it should be well made and last a long time, and it shouldn't be disgusting,
and it should be upcyclable,
and most people knew how to fix things too.
Yeah,
those concepts are out the window,
completely gone. I have it's not the pair of shoes I'm wearing. 2 pairs of shoes. My mother was wearing one the other day, and the other I had taken from her, that were both probably made 35 years ago, and we're still wearing them.
Yeah,
like there's not a pair of shoes that I've bought in the last 10 years that lasted longer than a year.
Yeah, I wear right through my shoes.
Right.
People talk, they act like I'm crazy.
It's engineered this way. They talk about gum companies. They'll go out of business if they put too much flavoring in the gum, because if you chew the same piece of gum for half of a day, then you've only used 2 pieces of gum for the whole day instead of 8. So you actually have the low quality product being the one that survives because they sell more gum.
What an absolutely meaningless, fantastic example of what we've been talking about.
Yeah.
Wouldn't have any more gum? Maybe a little more flavor too.
Make it less flavorful.
Yeah, put less flavor in it, and then that's how we'll actually make more money.
Well, less flavor, or at least the flavor doesn't last long, is probably the real
secret.
Yeah.
Lots of flavor for only 5 minutes.
Yeah, and then
flavor blast gum.
Yeah, that's why they have the
runs out in 5
in
minutes, and then you eat another one, then you buy another pack and run the economy. Thank you very much. Oh boy.
Let's do another solution, shall we?
Yeah.
Oh, I've already got it queued up. I'm amazing.
Put more flavor in.
Nope, that's not it. Okay, tide power. The vast majority of people live near the ocean.
Yeah.
The ocean is one of the greatest sources of energy on the planet. And it's wave action or tide action. So what you see up on screen is the water flowing into a bay and then flowing back out as the rise and flow. And then you just put a turbine in the water and it turns as the water flows past it. So, but you also have, you can have like a float, like an inner tube sitting on top of the water. And as it goes up and down, it's attached to an arm, and the arm is attached to a pump. And, or you can have any number of things that all work on that basic principle of water moving up and down. And there is more than enough energy all over the place to run the world, just smashing against the rocks of the shore. So, and that's where people live. So that's an easy peasy.
Yeah.
And I will add that, the ocean.
Easy peasy is where you already live.
You just get up in front of a bunch of diplomats and go, guys, easy peasy.
You might find this hard to believe, but it's actually easy peasy.
Yeah. I don't think that's going to convince them.
It's a good point too, given that we were just talking about the power of water, in this specific case, salty water. If you have enough energy, you can take the salt out of water, which is a pretty intensive process.
It is, yeah.
But if you have unlimited energy, you have unlimited water as well.
Right.
But technically, if you have unlimited energy, you could pull all the carbon out of the air. And I would argue that's not really an issue, but that doesn't matter because I want to live in a world where we have no pollution.
Yeah.
And it's possible right now. It's possible now, people. Next.
Tell us how.
We are. Aren't I? Am I not?
You are. Yes, you are.
Let's see. Headed back to... The problem is it takes 3 clicks to do one thing here. I need to figure that out. I should have some sort of hotkeys. Molten salt energy storage.
Oh, I've heard of these ones. These are cool.
I have not heard of these.
This is how they develop energy in Dubai.
I don't actually know what we're going to find. Oh, this actually...
No, that's perfect.
Molten salt tower receiver.
Let's go back. Oh, here we go. This is what we want. So we have a giant field full of mirrors.
Oh, so
and every
cool.
single mirror knows where the sun is, and so it's pointing it to the top of that tower. So, like magnifying glass. It's a giant magnifying glass, and it's shooting sunlight at the top of the tower, and flowing through the tower is salt, but it's so hot that it's in liquid form. And the advantage of this is, number one, which is the problem with nuclear, when you heat up water, it becomes high pressure. So in order to turn a turbine with water, you have to have very high pressure, and then that water is also irradiated in a nuclear power plant. So with the explosion of hot, high-pressure water is also nuclear when that goes wrong.
Because you can cut through metal with water.
Yeah, water's amazing. Yeah. So it's not safe when you want to make it not safe. It's an amazing stuff. But so the advantage of your molten salt reactor is that it's not a high pressure situation because it's just a liquid. So, you're not like worried about things exploding. And then on top of that, you can have a giant pool of this liquid salt sitting at the base. And when the sun goes down, you still have a ton of super hot liquid salt, which then can boil water and turn a turbine. So you have, this is how you store energy for all day and then use that energy at night without any batteries.
That is really incredible.
Totally works great.
What's the waste percentage? In terms of like we were talking about wind, solar, and nuclear having, only being able to use so much of the energy. How much of the energy can actually be harnessed?
That's a really interesting question. Let's try and find that out.
Yeah, I imagine it would be, it sounds a lot more efficient in terms of how the waste, because as the salt is cooling down, that's where your waste would normally be, right? It'd be stuff that couldn't be run in the normal turbine.
It would be at the rate that the heat was lost from the salt.
Exactly.
This is saying maintaining 98%.
That's fucking crazy.
But then, so it's eventually pumped into a steam generator. Okay, got it.
Yeah, so the salt then boils water.
It's all about boiling water, yeah.
A lot of what I hear is like the problem with even solar or wind or whatever is because we have a grid system, right, with electricity where it can't convert, and that wasn't until like 10 years ago or something that they could actually use it as it was being made and not have to store it somewhere. So if it wasn't being made, it had to be used immediately.
Yeah. So, and like most of your power plants are running at like, if right now, let's say, it's using 46% of its capacity, they're running it at like 55, 60% because they have to anticipate demand.
Right.
So, and they probably know like generally what they're going to use at night and day, but they're always blasting unused energy out the back door just in case everybody flips on the lights.
Does that extra stuff just get grounded?
In case it's the Super Bowl.
Or it just runs around in the grid?
I'm sure it's just boiled off. It's probably just like that's what you see the steam escaping from power plants and those kinds of things.
Oh my
God. It's just waste heat blown out the door. Yeah.
It just makes me think
But the sun was going to keep on shining anyway.
The sun's fine, but like but
do you see the not?
the Suncor guys over on like I-70 on your way to Stapleton? You see, it's like the big bellowing steam towers here in Denver. Like 3 months ago, they got slapped with a lawsuit for like immense negligence regarding what they were putting out. And I remember always saying like, Dad, Mom, that looks like it's pollution.
Yeah, it's always been really nasty.
Yeah, and they were like, no, it's just steam. Everyone says it's just steam, and it's not.
They're just clouds.
They're
just clouds.
Clouds of what? Oh my. What are you pulling up here, Sampson?
So this is our last solution, and we're at 58 minutes, so this is working out quite well.
Perfect.
All right, back to YouTube. So this is Thorium Remix 2011, and there you see a man pointing at a standard nuclear reactor. I believe that's that's the one, and it's got the case over the top, the dome, which in the event of a steam explosion, which is the big problem with nuclear reactor, it's trying to contain the steam. So, and one of his points about the benefits of this is that you don't need that because there is no steam issue with liquid thorium. So if you are interested at all in energy, I highly recommend you Google Thorium Remix 2011. There is a remix movie for pretty much every year. And what happened was this guy was just like, this is a great idea. I'm going to follow this guy around and videotape him. And then I'm going to take cuts of all these videotapes and I'm going to put it on YouTube. So this guy was just kind of touring the country being like, you guys, there's this amazing idea. And I think that you should know about it. And this one guy was like, that's amazing. And he just starts following the guy around. And they've even talked about it. Yeah. And he's like, yeah, this guy just starts following me around and videotaping me. Like, I didn't ask him to. Next thing I know, I'm just like riding in the car with him everywhere I go.
That's such a good example, though. Of
675,000 views.
That's great.
Yeah.
It's a great example of all these people who probably have amazing ideas but aren't being listened to or don't have platforms to mention their stuff.
Yeah, and so 2011 is the introductory one. It's the best. It cuts all of he goes through everything of like why it's bad, what's bad about regular nuclear and what's good about thorium. Yeah. And then all the new ones are kind of like how he's taken it. Because he has a very well-designed system now of like where the energy is coming in and out. And he's using the vast majority of the energy. There's no pressure problem. There's no nuclear waste problem.
It's so tight.
Thorium is one of the most abundant elements on the planet. Like every single mine in the entire country is throwing away enough energy to run the world. Like every single mine is throwing away enough energy to run the world. And the kicker, this was designed by the guy who created nuclear power that we use. So that guy made nuclear power 1.0.
Really?
And everyone's like, this is great.
He patched it.
It's going to make power. We can run our submarines on it and it shits out bullets. This is great. And so in the background, he was like, okay, well, that was cool. Now let's see if I could do it better. And he did.
And no one's listening.
He was
670,000 people are. So
yeah, and he was smart enough to know that they probably weren't going to be that interested in it. So the way he sold to get funding to like produce this new reactor, at least proof of concept, was he went to the Air Force and he was like, I can make a nuclear powered bomber. And they were like, great. So they gave him a bunch of money.
We want it.
Yeah, so they gave him a bunch of money.
Here's some money. Yeah, perfect. Here's some money. Here's some money.
Physicists are always crazy.
And he knew it wasn't really going to work out, but he just milked him for the cash. And he got a reactor up and running and proved that it worked and then shelved it. And then this guy, Kirk Sorensen, found his book later and was like, whoa, what is this? And that's what got him into it. He just found this guy's book randomly sitting on some professor's shelf, basically.
Plug for books.
Yeah. So, but interestingly, those of you still looking at the screen here will see that this says Thorium Debunked up here in the right-hand corner. So if you were to come and watch Thorium and Energy Solution, and then the next YouTube is automatically going to show you
for by GE.
Thorium Debunked. But the interesting thing about the Thorium Debunked video is that is all about the math of solid fuel reactors. So we use solid fuel reactors in current nuclear. And thorium is a revolution in energy because it uses liquid fuel. Yeah. So it's a completely different system. And this is saying like it is not possible as a solid fuel. And we're like, yeah, we know that. We're not.
Because it's liquid.
We're on a whole other thing here, bro. Yeah. A whole other thing.
Whole other conversation.
That didn't work. You're right.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that is a real solution that's been around since the 50s, and no one's mentioned it. It was shelved, not even like actively shelved. That's like one of those things where like.
So what happened to the guy that wrote the book?
I think he has passed away, although probably not too long ago. But he came from the heyday of science when everyone was like inventing crazy bombs and things. Like he was one of those guys.
So they didn't kill him because he made a bomb.
No, he played the game. Like he didn't go around being mad at the government for not. Wrote a book about very good product. He is a technical manual. Like you'd think you'd go to the library and you'd be like, hey, give me everything you got on nuclear power. And if you were lucky in a big library, you'd find his book. But there's probably only a couple of copies of it out there. But to finishing that whole situation, China is currently building one. And a bunch of people from China showed up and they were like to this guy Kirk and they were like, hey bro, what's going on? Can we have a look at your research? And he was like, yeah, here, have everything. This stuff is great. And they're like, sweet. And next thing you know, they're like, we're building one. Yeah. And he's over here in America, like touring and just being like, all right, well, I've gotten the Chinese attention. Maybe you guys should pay attention.
Yeah. Well, good luck to him. Yeah. And good luck to all of this stuff. But I mean,
good luck to all of us.
Yeah, all of us. The thing that continues to strike me is there's so many solutions. So it's not like there isn't a solution and having a solution would be the solution. It's like why we're not taking advantage of any of this stuff.
Not at all. Not even a little bit.
Because it doesn't make money.
Because the people that have the position at this moment to make decisions this way are making the money.
Which is, if you're somebody who watches these podcasts, you hear us talk about like currency and stuff, and you think, oh, well, that's not that important. This is an example of why it's so important to really discuss what currency is, like deeper than what money is, because until we find some other alternate way of valuing things, it doesn't matter what fuel or answer we've got. It's just going to be pimped out to the system.
Right, which is the difference between maybe a fourth generation of humans from now or something.
Yeah.
You know? And that's not at all what anyone is thinking about.
I hope so. I hope in 100 years we look back and we're like, whoa.
Wow, we really did a good thing there.
Yeah.
We did a good thing there.
You're about to see the paradigm shift, so I'm convinced. Like everything is about to.
So?
Oh yeah, everything is about to.
That's what your dream
snap.
was about.
Yeah, your dream was about the paradigm shift.
It was partly. Yeah. I mean, it was kind of like post-shift. It was just like all about like we've already got rockets and the things that you can actually travel space with. Yeah,
but it's a reality where they just dose the army with LSD.
Yeah, and I didn't get the impression that everyone else got dosed. It was just one of those things where like everyone took a pill and ours happened to have LSD.
There's a Black Mirror episode where they all are fighting a war against.
Yeah, it's all drugs.
Yeah, they think these aliens or whatever.
This must be one of the new ones. I don't think I've gotten all the way through that show.
Yeah, it's real good.
I watched every episode of Black Mirror. And
no, the virtual reality one.
Yeah. No. That's a different one.
They're on the ground. They're in the middle of this war with this like invasive alien that's like they're really crazy and horrific. And then they had done these like mind implants to make it so they were seeing the aliens, but they weren't aliens. They're just like scared people.
Yeah.
No, it was a VR thing, like the.
Okay. Yeah. Sure.
Yeah.
They hacked their brains.
No, yeah, because the people getting killed were seeing robots.
They were seeing aliens.
No, the people shooting were seeing aliens.
Yes,
but they were playing a video game at home, and they had a VR headset, so they were like there in it. But the person who was being, the like alien that they were seeing was actually like a homeless person cowering, and they were like clearing out. They were clearing out ghettos.
Ender's Game and
no. I know
because they were actually on the ground.
Either way,
whatever.
Black Mirror is fantastic.
It is,
Hashtag
it's
Black
amazing.
Mirror. Take a look. You're going to watch it and then look into the mirror at yourself for an hour and wonder who you are.
Watch the BBC version first.
Yeah, I agree. Well, Sampson, thank you for explaining nothing.
Well, yeah, like I do want to finish on. I wanted to come back to the one quick point to. What do I want? This one? I want that one. You mentioned the banks, and like the reason that this is an issue is because. In the same way that, like, if the bank was going to charge you 0 transaction fees, the bank would have no point in existing, right? So the question is, like, can you...
As a private entity.
Yeah, because they're like, well, money is necessary. We need a medium of exchange. I don't necessarily always want goats in exchange for my boots. So rather than having a stockpile of goats, because the goat guy uses a lot of boots, as goat guys do, he's giving you money, and you can go buy milk from the milk guy, and you can occasionally get sheep from the sheep guy, and the guy's got all the boots he needs. But the issue is that the bank exists because there is a market for its product, and it's charging a transaction fee, and that's how it's generating to operate. And so not only do we have a banking system which is just as inefficient as our energy situation,
they're sort of the same situation.
Yeah, they're identical. And the question that we must be asking ourselves is, do we really need money that includes a transaction fee? Is the bank necessary? Is the Excel energy, are they necessary? Is it possible to have a box sitting in your backyard or on your kitchen table that runs your house without the need of like a controlling middleman entity taking a chunk, And like I was reading an article this week about a guy he was being taxed on the energy that he was creating on his solar panels. Cause you can feed energy back into the grid depending on when and where and stuff. And even that stuff's not done very well, but he was being taxed for the stuff that was being grown on his land, essentially energy grown on his land. So, that's the problem you have, is that when you start to get really good ideas, they start to eliminate industries, and those industries can afford to pay those things away because they have to. That's in their best interest. It's not this, there's no mystery behind the whole situation.
It also starts to cause a lot of friction with the law that's already in place, like collecting rainwater. Like, so if you're saying you're actually developing that energy on his private property, like who owns the ray from the sun to his actual property, because that's actually airspace. Yeah. So if somebody wanted to, they could be like, well, you know what? We're just going to black out the whole sun because we own the airspace.
Classic Mr. Burns.
Classic Mr. Burns.
Classic Mr. Burns. Well, I think that's a good point to end on. The classic Mr. Burns.
Yeah.
I was saying Boo Earns. All right. So hopefully throughout this podcast, if you were watching, listening, whatever, I have not explained anything.
You're doing a great job.
Because that's not what I do. Joining me as always was... Well, let's go over to Ryan Fu. We'll put you on the Zoom. Is that you? No. I'm bad at this, apparently. I'm pressing buttons too quickly.
Am I on the camera?
You are now on camera. Feel
What's
free.
up? It's been great. I love sitting here and learning. This man is a genius, and it's fun to learn from him.
I wouldn't go that far.
I think so.
Yeah, this is now my second time on here, and it's been a really fun time.
Yeah, thanks for hanging out.
I also agree with the genius status.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so nice, you guys.
Yeah.
It's just a label. Don't worry.
As my friend Joe would always say, though, you're only with genius. You aren't a genius.
Very good. I like that.
Ingenious.
Or genius is in you.
Yes.
Yeah.
I really like that.
It's occasional.
I like with genius. That's good.
With genius.
This one, he's with genius.
He's with genius.
Yes.
I am.
It's like I'm with stupid sometimes.
Well, you're like I am with child. I'm pregnant with ideas.
That's what I thought. Yeah. You are pregnant with ideas.
They're like seeping from me, sort of.
Okay. Well, it's been fun to see your ideas come to
And
birth.
hello everyone. I am Sampson, and this has been my podcast. So we'll see you next week.
Peace.
Bye.